This, as you probably know, is the International Year of the Child, a concept that would hardly have appealed to the immortal W.C. Fields, who once delivered himself of the memorable line, "Anyone who hates kids and dogs can be all bad." On another occasion, when asked how he liked children, he replied with admirable brevity, "Parboiled." Still, these are extreme and misanthropic sentiments with which I'm careful not to associate myself, because tonight, in the first of two Film 79 specials, we'll be doing our bit for the Year of the Child by looking at the history of child stars in the movies over the last 60 years. Whether you like them or not, and I have my own reservations, child actors have been a staple ingredient of the cinema almost from the start, and indeed they still are. Tatum O'Neal, Linda Blair and Jodie Foster are three prime examples from the 1970s, though the films they appear in tend to be a great deal raunchier and tougher than those of their predecessors over the last half-century. Interestingly enough, though, the Italian director Franco Zeffirelli, influenced perhaps by the continuing nostalgia boom, is harking back to a more sentimental age with his current remake of the 1931 picture, The Champ. This is a soft and weepy melodrama about a boozy boxer and his small son. In the 1979 version, Jon Voight is the fighter, and an 8-year-old named Ricky Schroeder is the boy who helps him get into shape for a comeback.
You know what you want?
A pain in the ass.
A pain in the ass, yeah, that's right. I know one thing. I ain't gonna never leave you again. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Well, in the original version, 48 years ago, 10-year-old Jackie Cooper was the lad who had the audience snuffling happily into its handkerchief, and Wallace Beery, although he won an Oscar for his role as the boxer, learnt the hard way that it's always dangerous to appear in a film with animals and children. But I suppose the first of the child stars was Mary Pickford, who began in films when she was 16, rapidly became known as America's sweetheart, and continued playing little girls for the next 16 years. More than any other performer, she became the occupational hazard of all child stars, namely, what do you do when you grow up? Mary Pickford had the perfect answer. She didn't. Jackie Coogan wasn't so lucky. He did grow up, and his adult career never matched the splendour of his childhood, almost, in fact, his infancy. He was discovered at the age of 5 in his parents' vaudeville act by Charlie Chaplin. Chaplin said that what attracted him was the boy's whimsical, wistful quality, and he put that to practical use in his 1920 film, The Kid. Chaplin was the tramp who mended broken windows in London, and Coogan was the waif he adopted. In a real tearjerker, the lad is lost, and he and the tramp are reunited in heaven. Chaplin used Coogan to portray aspects of his own childhood, and that whimsical, wistful quality really got among the audience in a big way. Even so, young Coogan's true stardom lasted for only 7 years, at which time he was struck down by the dread disease of child stars, irreversible adolescence. As an adult, he continued to appear in films, but by then he was just another very competent character actor. In the late 1920s, the producer Hal Roach overheard a bunch of children arguing in a playground and was thus inspired to get together a whole mob of kids who became known in the cinema as Our Gang. As a matter of fact, Jackie Cooper was a member of Our Gang before he made The Champ, and without him, the rest of the gang and their successors carried on into the 1930s and even the 1940s. But in those early days of the 30s, there appeared a child star who must have been just about as young as even a child star could be. Baby Leroy, whose real name was Leroy Overacker. No, not overactor, though like all infant hams, he was undoubtedly that too, but overacker. As Baby Leroy, he made his debut at 8 months. By the age of 2, he was appearing with Maurice Chevalier in A Bedtime Story, and at 3 was in Tilly and Gus with W.C. Fields. To make this unfortunate kid laugh, the filmmakers would pour buckets of water over his teenage mother as she sat on the sidelines, and then film his reactions. Well, Baby Leroy's career went on to the advanced age of about 5, though it wasn't much helped by the aforementioned W.C. Fields, who disliked him intensely and once spiked his milk with alcohol. When the child consequently reported unfit for work, Fields said, "See, the kid's no trooper, can't hold his liquor." Very mean man, W.C. Fields. Round about the time Baby Leroy was hitting his brief peak, one Joe Yule appeared on the scene, aged 12. He didn't appear as Joe Yule, indeed he appeared here as Mickey Maguire. No doubt you recognise him.
Never knew a girl could roll her eyes and cut so many signs until I met my baby.
Yule, alias Maguire, eventually became Mickey Rooney and won a special juvenile Oscar for Boys Town when he was 18. But 3 years before that, he gave what was really a remarkable performance for one his age as Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Usually Puck is played by a somewhat truncated adult, but MGM wanted a child for the part, and Rooney was under contract. But, of course, the most astonishing child star of them all was Shirley Temple. She made her debut at the age of 3 after being discovered hiding under a piano at a dancing school in a series of takeoffs of adult movies called Baby Burlesques. At the age of 4, Shirley Temple made her first full-length picture, The Red-Haired Alibi, and in 1934, when she was all of 6, she made no fewer than 7 pictures, many of them with her name above the title. In that year, too, she sang On the Good Ship Lollipop in the film Bright Eyes and won a Special Academy Award in recognition of her outstanding contribution to screen entertainment. At the age of 6? The mind boggles. On the other hand, she had to be good to survive, because in those Depression years it was reckoned that 100 children arrived in Hollywood with their parents every quarter of an hour in search of a break in the movies. That Temple's position as the topmost fairy on the Hollywood Christmas tree was never seriously threatened owes much to what in an older actress would be called professionalism, but what in her case was probably an inherent theatrical instinct. She rarely fluffed a line, and the director John Ford nicknamed her One-Take Temple. She had talent and charm, and she was undoubtedly and even remorselessly cute. Mind you, some nasty-minded people have said that she was really a small sex object, the forerunner of Nabokov's Lolita. But in the more innocent age of the 1930s, nobody realised that. Just as well, perhaps. I suppose Temple's most significant contemporary, though never really a rival, was Jane Withers, who, being less pretty than Shirley Temple, was invariably cast as a nasty little brat. For the best part of a decade, she yelled and bit and kicked and screamed and usually ended up by having her bottom spanked. Retribution having been thus meted out in the last reel, the audiences went away thinking her naughty but lovable, and no doubt reflecting wistfully that their own children were more like Jane Withers than Shirley Temple, worse luck. In the later 1930s, Judy Garland came along, singled out from all those hundreds of aspiring child stars by her remarkable singing voice. And Deanna Durbin, who could also sing a bit, carved a brief but rich career for herself in films that ranged from 100 Men and a Girl with Leopold Stokowski and the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra to Can't Help Singing with a score by Jerome Kern. About the same time, a boy soprano named Bobby Breen captivated audiences by singing Rainbow Over the River. Soon after that, however, adolescence got him and his voice broke, and that was the end of his Hollywood career. Here he is in his heyday.
I don't like to be at ease is such a treat. Smile to everyone I meet. That's the Hawaiian me. I love to sing and dance for you and give a hand to cheer you through. And with that goes a smile or two. That's the Hawaiian me. It's great to be in Hawaii and to be a native too. But it's greater still to play around and carry on as I do. Look at the house, all right out here in Hawaii, where everything's just heavenly. I'm just as happy as can be. That's the Hawaiian me. Yeehaw!
Now, Britain's major contribution to this thriving child star industry was Freddie Bartholomew, whose public school accent and impeccable, if rather toffee-nosed manners made him a natural for parts like Garbo's son in Anna Karenina and the title role in both David Copperfield and Little Lord Fauntleroy. He was, I suppose, the sort of little boy that maiden aunts would drool over and other little boys would delight in kicking. But he wasn't at all a bad actor, as he revealed in Captains Courageous with Spencer Tracy.
Who's that?
Me?
Oh.
The food was awful. It was better than nothing, I guess. If you hadn't choked me, I wouldn't have had to kick you.
You kicked me? I feel nothing.
All cleared up, hasn't it? The weather, it's nice now.
It was till you come up.
Well, they sent me up.
No, I bet they asked you to stay.
They said you wanted to show me how to go on watch.
Nice fellas. Well, all right, go ahead, watch.
How?
Just keep quiet. Go someplace. Go look for iceberg or boat or something.
Is that all there is to watching? That seems like a lot of hooey.
Hooey? What kind of smart talk that, hooey? You better tell Sailor's Angel that smart talk. He like to hear that, I think.
Who's he?
I guess you don't know nothing, huh? Sailor's Angel, he fly around up there all time. You watch here, look out for 25 men below. He watch up there, he look out for you. You go sleep, maybe. He tap you on shoulder with his wing, and he say, "Hey, Manuel, wake up. What's the matter? I ashamed for you." He very nice fella. Everybody know that.
Oh. Well, nothing on the port side.
That's fine. Anything on starboard?
No, nothing on the starboard either.
And nothing in the head. That port, that's starboard.
During World War II, as Shirley Temple and Freddie Bartholomew grew old, well into their teens anyway, Elizabeth Taylor and Roddy McDowall, both of them British incidentally, came along more or less to replace them. McDowall, who'd started his career in England at the age of 8, was evacuated to the USA in 1940, and a year later, aged 13, gave an excellent performance in How Green Was My Valley. Thereafter, he co-starred with a horse in My Friend Flicker, before teaming up with 9-year-old Elizabeth Taylor and a border collie in Lassie Come Home. Miss Taylor, also an evacuee, then went on to establish her reputation in National Velvet, by which time she was all of 12. Well, while all this was going on, America was producing its own homegrown talent. Peggy Ann Garner, aged 13, appeared so effectively in Jane Eyre and A Tree Grows in Brooklyn that she won a Special Academy Award as an Outstanding Child Actress, while the even younger Margaret O'Brien, who was only 7, also won a Special Oscar in 1944 and throughout the 40s enjoyed a popularity as a child star that nearly rivalled that of Shirley Temple a decade earlier. What she had, perhaps, more than any other infant actress was an almost blood-chilling ability to weep on cue. In fact, it was said of her that she once asked a director, "Which eye do you want me to cry from?" In the post-war years in Britain, there emerged the young Jean Simmons, aged 14 when she made her first picture, Give Us the Moon, and no more than 17 when in 1946 she appeared as Estella in David Lean's Great Expectations.
Well,
Well, miss?
am I pretty?
Yes, I think you're very pretty.
Am I insulting?
No, not so much so as you were last time.
Not so much so.
No.
There, take that, you coarse little monster. What do you think of me now?
I shan't tell you.
Because you're going to tell upstairs, is that it?
No, it's not it.
Why don't you cry again, you little wretch?
I'll never cry for you again.
In there, boy.
Another film of a Dickens novel, Oliver Twist, introduced the 9-year-old John Howard Davies, a gifted little actor and a sort of tougher version of Freddie Bartholomew. He went on to appear in The Rocking Horse Winner and Tom Brown's School Days before abandoning the acting game and re-emerging years later as a BBC TV producer. Whether that's more rewarding than being a child star, I wouldn't know, but I dare say it's steadier work. The 1940s, in fact, were rich in child stars. In America, among others, there were Natalie Wood and Bobby Driscoll. But in the 1950s, possibly because the film industry was shrinking in face of the competition from TV, there was a dearth of these precocious moppets, the only one of real note being perhaps Hayley Mills, who struck instant stardom at the age of 13 when she appeared with her father, John, in Tiger Bay in 1959. After that, she was whisked off to Hollywood, won the obligatory special Oscar a year later, and was for several years a mainstay of the Walt Disney Studio.
Oh, let me go! You let him alone! Oh, it's you, your lordship. Isn't it?
I dare say, but who are you?
Oh, please, your lordship, we must speak to you. We've come all the way from Plymouth. I'm Mary Grant. This is my brother. Our father's Captain Grant. Of the Britannia. And he's alive. The two of his men. And you must send a ship to bring them back. As quick as you can.
Now, just a minute. Come along, we'll talk it over. Now then, how do you know your father's still alive?
He put a note in a bottle. And the French professor, Monsieur Paganel, he found it.
Oh, that again.
What do you mean?
My dear children, ever since I posted the reward for news of your father's ship, people have been turning up with notes they claim to have found in bottles. How many is this, John?
22, Father.
If I had my way, every last one of the culprits would be hanged from the yardarm. Exploiting human misery, that's what it is. Nothing more vicious, more treacherous.
But it is from my father, I can tell. Monsieur Paganel, show them the note you found in the bottle.
Bonsoir, monsieur dame. Voilà. Oh, I'm sorry. Wrong bottle.
A decade after the emergence of Hayley Mills, history virtually repeated itself when Tatum O'Neal co-starred with her father Ryan in Paper Moon, pocketed her Special Academy Award, and went on to increased fame in Nickelodeon, a rotten film apart from her, and the Bad News Bears.
I'll tell you what, you come and pitch a few games for us. I'll pay for the modeling thing and the ballet lessons. Can't do anything about the braces because that's big money.
What am making you so dumb?
Those boys aren't very rough. You won't get hurt.
That's got nothing to do with it. I'm almost 12 and I'll be getting a bra soon. Well, maybe in a year or so. I can't be playing no dumb baseball.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're turning into a regular little lady. It's a dumb idea anyway. I mean, you wouldn't have helped the team much. I mean, you were great when you were 9, but girls reach their peak athletically about that age. Probably haven't picked up a ball in 2 years anyway. Give my love to your mom. Don't be such a stranger.
Hey, Boilermaker.
Yeah?
Got my curve breaking 2.5 feet.
Oh, yeah? Then you have been practicing, huh? Now, don't give me no baloney about a curve breaking 2.5 feet, though.
For how much?
$10.
Make it 20.
You got a bet.
More recently, Tatum O'Neal, now in the awkward transitional stage between childhood and womanhood, made a valiant attempt to launch herself into more adult roles in a sequel to National Velvet, the film that introduced Elizabeth Taylor to stardom. This one, directed by Brian Forbes, dealt with Olympic show jumping and was called International Velvet.
Now listen, don't do it for me. Do it for your father. He won the Grand National, remember? You've got to show him. Okay?
Et maintenant, pour la Grande-Bretagne, Mademoiselle Sarah Brown, montant Arizona Pie.
Number 86, Miss Sarah Brown, Great Britain.
What a moment for Sarah Brown. Riding with that injury, the last time this happened was when Bill Roycroft came off his hospital bed in Rome in 1960 for the Australians to win the gold medal. Can it happen again? And for viewers who've just joined us, this is a crucial moment for Britain. Sarah Brown must go clear. You could hear a pin drop now. The double. She's all right.
Once upon a time, children appeared only in what were called family films, but those days are long gone. Now they're being used more and more frequently in what are, without question, adult pictures, films full of sex and often violence. Perhaps all this started in a rather low-key way with 14-year-old Sue Lyon as the nymphette in Lolita back in the 1960s. Then Linda Blair, also 14, appeared as the child possessed by the devil in The Exorcist. And quite recently there was much controversy over Louis Malle's film Pretty Baby, in which 12-year-old Brooke Shields played a child living in a brothel. That film has in fact been banned in this country because of its sexual content and because it involves a child. By that criterion, one might then have thought that the ultra-violent Taxi Driver would also have been banned, because in that, another 12-year-old, Jodie Foster, was cast as a prostitute. But Britain and its censors, both official and self-appointed, always seem much more worried by sex than by violence, and so Taxi Driver got by with an X certificate. Here's Jodie Foster in her role as a prostitute.
I think that cancers make the best lovers, but God, my whole family are air signs.
He's also a dope shooter.
So what makes you so high and mighty? Will you tell me that? Didn't you ever try looking at your own eyeballs in the mirror?
So what are you going to do about sporting that old bastard?
When?
When you leave.
I don't know, just leave them, I guess.
You're just going to leave?
Well, yeah, they got plenty of other girls.
Yeah, but you just can't do that. What are you going to do?
What do you want me to do, call the cops?
Well, the cops don't do nothing. You know that.
Hey, look, Sport never treated me bad. I mean, he didn't beat me up or anything like that once.
But you can't allow him to do the same to other girls. You can't allow him to do that. He is the lowest kind of person in the world. Somebody's got to do something to him. He's the scum of the earth. He's the worst sucking scum I have ever seen. You know what he told me about you? He calling you names. He called you a little piece of chicken.
He doesn't mean that.
Now, what effect that kind of picture has on children is hard to tell. How much of the story are they told? How much are they told that at 12 they really don't need to know yet? Disillusionment about the human race comes early enough. It doesn't need to be rushed. In most countries, certainly in Britain and America, the authorities demand certain safeguards about the employment of children. So one can only hope that, however unsavoury the films they appear in, they're not given all the unsavoury facts. On a much less worrying note, here in Britain we have the Children's Film Foundation, set up 30 years ago and financed by the local film industry. In its time, it's provided a launching pad for a number of child actors. This one, for instance.
What a place. Just for the Duke to live in. We live here too.
Only in a few rooms, but it's jolly good.
Gosh, is your dad related to the Duke?
No, he's the Duke's steward. He looks after everything for him.
So you'll always live here?
Always and always. The Duke says I can be next steward, doesn't he, Joe?
What super luck. I say, what's the time?
22.
I better be going. See you later.
And that was David Hemmings as a boy in the Children's Film Foundation picture 5 Clues to Fortune. Well, the latest British film featuring children is The Water Babies, based on Charles Kingsley's classic novel and conceived as a mixture of live action and animation. It's an uneasy mixture, as a matter of fact, the live actors, notably Billy Whitelaw and James Mason, being far more interesting than the cartoons. The children, Tom the Chimney Sweep and Ellie, the rich little orphan, are played very nicely by Tommy Pender and Samantha Gates. Here's their first meeting.
Shout, please. I'm not. Morning, Chimney Sweep. Come down the chimney. See? I lost me way.
You've come down the chimney, boy?
Yeah.
But how terrible for you. Aren't you frightened being in the dark?
Sometimes, but I'm more frightened of Mr. Grimes.
Mr. Grimes?
He clouts me.
Clouts you?
It's me, regular. Across the euro.
Why don't you tell your parents?
You what?
Your mother and father.
I ain't got no mum or dad. Never did. Grimes says I was that shot in the London gutter by the sun.
The Water Babies will be around during the Easter holidays. What chance Tommy Pender and Samantha Gates have of growing up to be adult stars is, of course, anyone's guess. Back at the beginning of the programme, I said I had reservations about child stars. Now, that has nothing to do with their performances. Some of them are very good indeed. What worries me is the effect that child stardom has upon them and what they suffer when that stardom comes to an end. Some, of course, like Elizabeth Taylor, Donald O'Connor, Gene Simmons, Judy Garland, and in France, Jean-Pierre Léaud, who's been starring in Truffaut films since he was 15, go on to lengthy and lucrative careers. Even Shirley Temple, who never made the transition to adult roles, became a notable figure in American politics. But what about all those, the majority indeed, who didn't make it? It seems to me that to take a child, deprive it of its childhood, give it instead fame, adulation, and grown-up prizes like Oscars, and then to tell it when it's at its most impressionable age that it's a has-been and nobody wants it anymore, is a dangerous and questionable thing to do. But that's the fate of most of them. I reckon there's a fascinating and possibly valuable thesis to be written about what happens to all those child stars after the gravy train stops and the film industry tells them to get off. Perhaps the darker side of child stardom was best summed up by Shirley Temple when she said, "I stopped believing in Santa Claus when I was 6. Mother took me to see him in a department store and he asked for my autograph." I find that dreadfully sad. Childhood is too brief and too precious to be wasted in a film studio. But still, let's end on a cheerful note. Nearly 50 years after Little Miss Temple began her career imitating adults in baby burlesques, a splendid British picture called Bugsy Malone presented children as gangsters in the 1920s and starred Jodie Foster as the gangster's Moll singing in a speakeasy. I'll be back in a fortnight's time. Till then, goodbye.
My name is Tallulah, and soon I'll be gone. An open invitation